Then they went on to defend those principles on the field of battle, and then to establish a constitution, in fact, in one summer, to establish a constitution then ratified by the American people in their wisdom that still gives us liberty under law all these years later. Can you tell me another constitution that has served so well for so long? No, you cannot. Now why? Because they thought historically. They used the lessons of the past to make decisions in the present and to plan for the future. Now, the crisis in which we find ourselves today, the crisis in foreign policy, the economic crisis which grows worse every day, and the fact that we still as a people cannot come together to solve these problems is due to a conscious decision by both parties to refuse to learn the lessons of history. In fact, it comes from an arrogant assumption that we are above the laws of history. Now, lots of history is written. Great big mammoth biographies. There's even a History Channel. But historical information is of use only for answering Trivial Pursuit questions. It's not the facts that matter, it's the interpretation of those facts. And the founders believed that we must think historically. In other words, if we're going to go into the Middle East, we ponder the lessons of every empire that has gone there, from Ramses II down through the Camel Corps of Lawrence of Arabia, and what has been their fate. If we are talking about new economic models that will never again allow a business cycle, we should hear that same lesson taught in 1929, because that's exactly what the economists were saying. We believe that technology and science and communication, the internet, have lifted us above the laws of history. You know, you could have brought a pot-bellied professor here in May of 1914, and he would have told you that there would never again be a European war. There was a global economy, he said, and business would not allow another European war. So communication was so rapid. I mean, you had a telegraph, didn't you? So rapid that there would never again be the breakdown in communications that led to war. And moreover, technology was too terrible. War would be so costly that it would never be fought again. Well, the person was dead wrong, just like the people who told you there would never be another business cycle. But the founders used the lessons of history. But when they looked around for lessons, there weren't many that aided you in Republican government in their contemporary world. Name me some flourishing republics in 1787. Dutch Republic was decrepit. Venice was dying. We're going to have San Marino. Is that going to be your model, or Switzerland? No. So they looked back. In fact, the great idea of that day was centralized government under a benevolent despot. So they looked back to the classical past, and above all to Rome. And under the guidance of Rome, they crafted our Constitution to reflect a balance of power between a judicial branch, a legislative branch, and an executive branch. A Senate which controlled the purse strings and gave advice and led foreign policy, which is exactly what our Senate is supposed to do today. And this strong executive power in the hands of a council. But they also understood from the classical past that the best of constitutions will not work if it is not supported by what they call civic virtue, the willingness of an individual to subordinate himself to the good of the community as a whole, but there's an old-fashioned word for it. It's called patriotism. And unless young people are educated to understand the spirit of their Constitution, and in that sense of patriotism, it would fail. That's why here in the Northwest Territory, didn't they set up institutions of higher learning so that education and morality that went with it would be forever encouraged? Did that not happen? Yes. So a constitution vitalized by patriotic citizens. That is what Rome had had. And the founders knew that under that constitution, the balanced constitution of Rome, with its patriotic citizens, loving liberty and willing to defend it, Rome had grown into a great empire. Just as the founders in their wisdom and through the practical experience of Thomas Jefferson with the Louisiana Purchase saw this as an empire of liberty spreading across the continent. But they also feared that, like Rome, our growth and our success would begin to undermine the fundamental principles that had made it possible, that wealth and affluence and empire ultimately undermined patriotism and civic virtue. And they feared that we would reach a stage where we are right now. Rome of the 1st century BC had a critical decision to make. Did they wish to remain a great superpower, or did they wish to remain a free republic under a free republican constitution? Because they had come to understand that it was not possible to do both. That a constitution drafted for a small city-state by the Tiber could not bear the burden of governing a vast empire. What were we like when the Constitution was ratified by the wisdom of the American people? We were 13 struggling republics along the eastern seaboard, isn't that true? It took Thomas Jefferson 10 days to go from Monticello to Philadelphia. Could John Adams text message back home to Boston for some kind of advice? No, I'm quite serious. Transportation was the same in 1787 as it was in the days of Julius Caesar. If you went somewhere, you walked, you rode, you were carried by sail power. If George Washington wanted to communicate with James Madison, he did it in the same way that Caesar would have communicated with Cicero. Wrote it out by hand and had it carried by messenger. Isn't that true? So Rome, by 63 BC, found this question. Could they be a superpower and still a free republic? And of course they also understood it's not very easy to stop being a superpower. You raise up too much hostility. There are too many people eager to pull you down. But Rome was a superpower. In fact, it ruled the whole of the Mediterranean world. And it was deeply involved in the Middle East by 63 BC. In fact, it had been brought into the Middle East as a result of a terrorist attack. One single day in 88 BC, at the order of a rogue government under King Mithridates of Pontus, one single day, 8,000 Roman citizens living throughout the Middle East were killed. And Rome had to respond to it. So they sent in troops at first just to strike hard. But then now they had to stay on. And 25 years later, by 63 BC, there they were still in the Middle East trying to decide what to do with it. Annex it, nation build, or just get out.